Hey everybody, quick interjection before the episode gets going. I just want to let you know that it's still in the middle of the Christmas season for me over at UPS, and so I'm very busy. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to record a new episode for you guys. And I apologize for that, especially those who are looking for new content, especially for those who've been supporting me. So I'm trying to get back behind the mic, but it's been a lot of 12-hour days, so I appreciate your patience. In the meantime, however, I have been going through some of my old recordings to see if maybe I had some stuff I could put together, and I found this episode, this was a collection of stuff that I kind of smattered together of different Stronghold Adventures from the first Pillars of Eternity game. Basically, you send companions within the game out on adventures that happen off screen, and you get to hear the report of how that goes. And within those reports, we hear interesting stories. As well, we also get some interesting lore as a result if you read between the lines. And in this particular episode, I definitely lean into more of the idea of these can be used for really interesting ideas for tabletop role-playing games. Now, in my opinion, the episode's good enough to publish, but for those of you who might be used to the way I do things now, maybe you'll find some that's a little cringy every now and then. I don't know, because this is but this is at least a couple years ago, so I don't quite have the same podcasting chops, but I still think it's good in my opinion. I don't know, maybe I'm just overthinking it. Anyways, that's what I got for you guys today, so enjoy this legacy recording from a couple of years ago of some adventures from the first Pillars of Eternity game, and happy holidays, everybody.
Welcome to the World of Eora, a news and lore podcast about the Pillars of Eternity games, as well as Obsidian Entertainment's upcoming release, Avowed.
Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode for the World of Eora. I'm your host, Eric, aka Gingerino. Thank you guys for joining me on another episode as we dive into the history, lore, and game mechanics for Pillars of Eternity as we gear up for the release of Avowed. For those wondering why we pair Avowed and Pillars of Eternity together, it's because they share the same fantasy setting, known as Eora. And so, as the theory goes, if we dive into those first Pillars of Eternity games, we can get some insights into what the world is like, geek out about it a little bit, and for those looking forward to Avowed, we can learn a little bit about the world so that when we jump into the game, we understand what it is we're playing and where we are and what we're seeing. This episode will be the first of many episodes that I'm kind of going to use as impromptu episodes on some lore that we find from Stronghold missions within the first Pillars of Eternity games. Now, for the context of how that works, when you play Pillars of Eternity 1, you will eventually be able to have your own home base, your own stronghold, a place to call home, a place to lay your head, where you and your companions can get together and have mead and all that stuff. You know, it's your house, essentially, except it's basically a castle. While you're away in the game's narrative doing stuff, you will be able to send companions and people out on adventures and on missions that can get you and your stronghold wealth and unique items. And so these companion adventures, these stronghold adventures, actually contain a decent amount of lore, as well as for very good inspiration on D&D campaigns or other tabletop role-playing campaigns, either for your own world or if you have it set in the Pillars of Eternity world. So that's primarily what I'm going with here. I'm exploring the lore that are behind these background missions that are happening while you're playing the game, as well as kind of thinking how would this work on a tabletop role-playing game. And so that we're gonna do that. There are a lot of these missions, and they are segmented into different sections. We have minor adventures, we have average adventures, we have major adventures, grand adventures, legendary adventures, and each one of these categories have few or several different adventures that you can send a companion on. One of your companions that usually go with you in the party, you can send them on that adventure to do in the background to earn you money and to earn you unique items. So I can't go through all of them in one episode. As a result, this episode, because it's fairly easy and very straightforward, I'm going to do when I'm running low on time or if I know I'm going to be out of town or something like that. But I'm aiming to have these all out before Avowed comes out. So we're going to dive straight into it.
I'm curious. What exactly did you find there?
So these are listed as Stronghold random events because they can randomly come up for your companion to do them. And these are adventures that you send one of your companions on. So while you're out in the Deerwood, the setting for Pillars of Eternity 1, doing your thing and stabbing vampires in the face and all that, you get a little letter that says, hey, we've heard about this thing. Can we send somebody to go do it? And you will essentially reply back magically through the aether. Yeah, send Aloth to do it. Send Adair to do it. Send this guy to go and do that quest. And that quest will be accomplished in the background. After a certain period of time, you will receive the experience and the unique item and the money as rewards for that adventure being completed. Each adventure has a name, and each adventure has a unique item that comes as a result of it. Here we are, starting with minor adventures, of which we have, looks like 9. There are 9 through here. We're not going to go through all of them yet, so this will be minor adventures part 1 or of 2 or 3. The adventure from your stronghold is called Blackwater's Broken Tombs. This is another minor adventure. Here's the pitch for this adventure. At the southeastern edge of Erglanfath, the isolated town of Eranis Tears sits on the northern shore of the Lake of Drowned Tombs. Wow, that was a lot of location names back to back to back. Southeastern edge of Erglanfath. Erglanfath is an entire region. It's almost like its own country or nation in this area of the Eastern Reach, which is the continent that the first Pillars of game is taking place in. It's specifically taking place in a small location known as the Deerwood. It's a colony, but just outside the Deerwood's borders is this other nation, Erglanfath, which is the native tribes of this continent. So they're the people that have been living here for a long time. People of Deerwood came from across the ocean. In Erglanfath, this nation of tribes, there's an isolated town called Eranis Tears. Right, so this town that exists there sits on the northern shore of this lake called Lake of Drowned Tombs. We don't really know much about the Lake of Drowned Tombs, so whatever you want to put in there as a DM or a GM, gladly go for it. Lately, a strange phenomenon has turned the lake's clear waters black. Stranger still, the town's stone tombs have been breaking open from the inside, the skeletal occupants slowly marching to the water's edge and into the depths. Okay, so here's what we got. At this town, Eranis Tears, at the Lake of Drowned Tombs, the waters have gone from clear to black, and now the people that were buried in cemeteries are breaking out of their tombs and walking into the lake. And everyone's like, what's going on? Now, before I tell you about the conclusion of this adventure as written in the game, I want to mention, like, you as a GM, you as a DM, you can decide whatever you want about what's going on here. I'm going to give you what Obsidian wrote as a conclusion for this adventure. You can take it and twist it a little bit if you want, but you can also come up with completely unique stuff. We're just going over some of the lore that we see in these things. Here's the conclusion. After several futile nights of waiting, Companion Name finally discovered the origin of the lake's black waters. Wow. The Kiangwala of a witch who had settled in Eranis Tears over a century ago. I don't even know how to pronounce it properly. It's a Ceangwla, and the W has a weird hat on top of it. Ciangula or Kianguila. It's a type of spirit. It's a type of ghost enemy. You fight a lot of them in Pillars of Eternity 1. They're very fierce. They're very powerful. And this is a very powerful ghost, essentially, of a witch who had settled in that area over a century ago. Locals accidentally plowed up her burial plot. Whoops. Her remains had slid into the lake during a fierce storm. Okay, so this is what made the water go black. The spirit, previously content to haunt the field, had begun calling her old neighbors down to the lake with her. With the help of the locals, Companion Name was able to put the spirit to rest. So this is an interesting idea, too, about the nature of how things like this work, like the metaphysics of the world work. So this burial plot can be unearthed accidentally, the remains of which fall into a lake, and the ghost of this witch whose remains have fallen into the lake can pollute the entire lake and cause it to go black. How does that work? I don't know. There's a few theories I could come up with for how soul mechanics work in this world, but it's just that's how it works. That's what they wrote for it. So, like, how does that work? How do you think that works as a DM? Email me, worldofeora@gmail.com, so I could steal your ideas for my personal tabletop role-playing pleasure. And then on top of it, she can actually beckon forth other spirits and ghosts. So it's like there's a lot going on here about the mechanics of this world that are kind of hidden behind the scenes here. Most of the corpses were able to be returned to their tombs, but not all the tombs could be reassembled. Companion Name brought back a piece of one mystery tomb as a souvenir, and that's the reward you get, which is something called Giagik Bur Tomb Fragment. I'll explain the weird name in a second. But I just want to bring forth this interesting idea of like So the remains are in the lake, the ghost is over the lake or in the lake. How do you, as a party, get to that ghost and then defeat it or resolve its issues? Like, what happened? Like, what even happened to the witch a century ago? Why is she angry? And how do you defeat her? Like, how does that all work? I guess that's for you to figure out. The item in question that you get, that was a weird description, is a fragment from a tombstone containing only a few letters from the person's name. The letters being YCG in the first name, all lowercase, followed by BR, with the B being capital. So obviously you have like the last portion of a person's name and the first portion of a person's last name on this tombstone. This tombstone has been imbued with supernatural powers by the spirit haunting Irana's tears. The enchantments on this tomb fragment that you can carry around with you, it gives you basically something called Banishing, which gives you more accuracy against spirits, and something called False Life, which gives you 29 max health and 25 max endurance. Basically makes you stronger yourself and also against spirits. So yeah, it's kind of useful. But we don't know who the name on the tombstone is. That's something you as a DM can figure out what it means. YCG would be pronounced Ij, I think. So like E with the Y and the CG kind of makes a J, like in bridge, if I'm remembering correctly. BR, it just sounds brr. So that's up to you, whether it's an ancient person or not, or maybe that is the witch. Who knows, right? I love stuff like that. I love just a little bit of mystery where you can bring into like, oh, what's the tombstone of this person? And now you're carrying it on you. One of your party members is carrying it on you. But the ghost of said tomb is very attached to their tombstone, and now they're with you. Or maybe they were in the tombstone and now they're literally with you everywhere you go, and that's going to cause some issue down the road. It's a little bit of fantasy role playing inspiration there. I love it.
If you find your trail has run cold, come to me with whatever you have. There is much I may be able to do for you.
The next adventure is called Clerical Errors. So this is, again, another minor adventure that you can send a companion on in the background. The reward for this is called Saint Boragia's Tears. I love learning about NPCs in the game, especially when you don't get to see them actually in the game either way. So, here we go. Toward the end of the Saints' War, which is a religious war that was led by a place called Raed Saris against the nation of the Deerwood, which is where Pillars of Eternity 1 is played in. Towards the end of that religious war, the Saints' War, the Battle of Mercy Vale, there's the name of a battle at a place called Mercy Vale, saw the Deerwoodens suffer a terrible defeat at the hands of their northern neighbors, the Raed Sarans. Many relics of Magronite saints being clergy members of the goddess Magron, were lost when invaders sacked the Church of the Winding Flame. It's probably winding. It could be winding flame, but I highly doubt it. So we just learned some lore here. I actually didn't even know this. There is a Church of the Winding Flame that exists within this world. What they do and what their rituals are and what they're all windy about, I don't know. But there you go. And a lot of relics to this church were lost during the defeat at the Battle of Mercy Vale during the Saints' War. In the years since the war's end, all of the relics were believed to have been accounted for. It wasn't until recently that Magron's faithful realized 3 items were erroneously marked down as recovered. The hand of Saint Idra, a lock of hair from Saint Dodwin, and the tears of Saint Boragia. Magronites are making inquiries across the Deerwood about their whereabouts. Sounds like you, as the leader of your stronghold, can send a companion out to help these Magronites. Here's the conclusion to that. I don't think there's any other lore we can go over. I don't know who any of these saints are. Saint Igrad, Saint Dodwin, and Saint Boragia. I don't know who they are. Obviously, they're saints of this Magronite church, so they're important in some way. The conclusion. Companion name inquired about the Deerwood and found the hand of Saint Igra in New Heomar, which is a location within the Deerwood colony. It's actually part of one of the earldoms known as the Grasp. We haven't talked about them yet, at least at the time of those episodes recording. The Deerwood is still broken into earldoms, so a nation that has different provinces or states. The Grasp is one of those states, and one of the locations in the Grasp is New Heomar, a port city that is home to a chapter of Bleakwalkers, which are a bunch of paladins that are really good at killing you. We can talk about them another time. In fact, I think I have talked about the Bleakwalkers in my Paladin episode if you want to check that out. But anyways, your companion found the hand of Saint Idra in New Heomar Curio Shop, a lock of hair from Saint Dodwin on a girl's doll in Log Home, which is a location we brought up in one of the previous adventures we talked about, and the Tears of St. Borgia around the neck of a vicious mercenary in Rhodes End. Rhodes End is another place that we've talked about. So there are already 3 locations on the map that you don't get to see in-game, but you hear about through things like this within the lore. By the way, if you are wanting to play a game in the Deerwood for your tabletop role-playing game, you can very easily search for Pillars of Eternity Deerwood map in Google or Bing, whatever you're using, and you can find an image of the Deerwood, even outside of the area that you play the game in, so you have an idea where these locations are and how you can use them for your tabletop game, or unless you're transplanting it into your own system. The rebuilt Church of the Winding Flame was grateful for the return of all 3 relics, but during companion names investigations, 2 high-ranking priests of Magrin cast doubt on the patriotism of St. Borgia. Oh, that's St. Borgia. You can't trust a man with 2 R's in his name. I don't know. Using evidence from the original copy of her Vita, the priests generated enough criticism that the church reluctantly turned away St. Borgia's tears. Their loss was companion names gained. And so now you get to keep that item for yourself. The item in question is an amulet, which you can wear on your person, or you can give it to one of your party members that are walking with you. A small, delicate vial attached to a thin golden necklace. It allegedly contains the tears of St. Borgia, a Magronite saint, and it was lost and blah, blah, blah. Why its tears matter is up to you. What do you think? You know, on all these things I've asked, like, what do you think? How does this work? What would be an interesting inspiration, or what do you think some of these things can do? Why is St. Borgia's tears so important? The enchantments attached to this, a thing called Final Rites. It grants holy radiance on unconscious, which basically means that if somebody knocks you out in combat, then the ability Holy Radiance will go poof, like, so it just happens automatically. So, which is very helpful for your party if someone gets knocked down. And something called Mending, which is 15% healing on your person. So there you go. Clerical errors. Okay, I'm going to do one more, but this time I'm going to take it from the average adventures. So I'm skipping to a new category now, average adventures, because all of the stuff we're talking about is in the Deerwood, and that's all great and stuff like that. But I want to take a peek at what some other adventures can be when you up it to a little bit more. So these adventures still happen in the background. You don't have to do anything, but they take longer to complete, and apparently they're more complex. But also, there's more lore, and you get better loot for it. So this is not the minor adventure. This is an average adventure, the Wreath of Ashes, for which you get the Remembrance Ashes item. Here is the pitch. In the Valian Republics of Palminia, so Valian Republics is a confederation, I think, which is south of the Deerwood, that is where Pillars of Eternity is played, and Palminia is a city, I believe, there. A military graveyard has been struck by vandals that burn tributes left for the dead. Though troubling to the Duchess, she has a few local resources to deal with the problem. As the Republic will soon be celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Battle of Lagon Perella, the Duchess will like to have the mystery solved quickly and quietly. So, basically, in another country altogether, someone's asking for help that your party can be a part of. So, this nation, this sort of republic, is celebrating its 50th anniversary of some battle, which we don't know anything about, and they want you to get this solved quickly as they prepare for this celebration. So it kind of puts a little bit of a impetus on your party to be able to solve this within a period of time. Here's the conclusion for how to do this. So, with the blessings of the Duchess of Palminia, which again is just a city, companion name began an earnest investigation of the vandalism at the military graveyard. After a large amount of digging, some literal, some figurative, companion name was able to track down the solitary culprit, the grandson of a soldier who was executed for cowardice in the Battle of Lagon Perella. According to the young man, his grandfather was slaughtered, and the execution was not just. The Duchess and Palminia's Sangreta, which is part of the governmental structure of that area, Sangreta Ducala, reviewed the man's evidence and decided to restore his grandfather's dignity by inscribing his name on Lagon Perella's memorial. However, the young man was still guilty of violating a long list of Palminian laws and customs. The Duchess exiled him from the island for life. So in the pitch, we talked about the Valian Republic, which is its own new bustling nation. It originates from one of the old superpowers of this world, the Old Valia or Grand Valia. But Valian Publics is very new superpower of the world, much like the Deerwood is. And they had a battle called Battle of Lagon Pirella. Don't know what that is. And you're on this island, apparently, called Palminia, where the Duchess, the leader, is asking you to get this solved. You figure out that it's some soldier's kid who was upset about his grandfather being disgraced as a coward. You somehow find out that the grandfather really wasn't a coward, and they fix the issue. But they exile him for life from this island that you're doing this adventure on. What happens with this person? Perhaps he comes back with you to your stronghold, and he serves you since you helped him out so much. Who knows? The item you get back is Remembrance Ashes, and it is a consumable item. It's described as even small quantities of the ash from this valiant urn have the power to cast Reviving Exhortation on an ally. So essentially what it does is you pick a target, it revives with 30 health, and it then gives you negative 50 health after 15 seconds. So it revives you a lot, but then it kind of like pulls you down a bit, and you can use it 7 times. So there you go. Remembrance Ashes. I'm guessing that must be the ashes. What is that the ashes of? Is that the ashes of his grandfather? Did you take the ashes of this man's grandfather? You monster. Good luck trying to figure out how to do that. I don't know, maybe that's just called Remembrance Ashes? I don't know. That's all right then. I don't know how I feel about that, but there you go. Remembrance Ashes as the the reward for helping this person out is you steal his grandfather's ashes and you eat them. And you don't eat them. You put them on, or you make someone else eat them who is about to die, and they don't die. There you go. That's how it works. That's it. That's all I have for today. All I've got here, I went through 4 of the minor adventures that you see within the Stronghold, and I did 1 of the average adventures. I love the lore and the stories that come out of this. When you start to get to the level of legendary adventures, you start to see some like pretty big things. Like you travel to an entirely different continent, you enter into different planes of existence, and a lot of weird stuff can happen. It's very cool. In future episodes, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to take 1 from each of the categories, and we're going to talk about them like that. Now, this has been a lot of interesting lore from the Pillars of Eternity games. And it's also given us some inspiration for how we can run our D&D campaigns, whether you play them in Eora or you're going to just transpose it into your own game system. That's up to you, obviously. I hope it's given you some information. If you want to start a conversation about it, I'll give my socials in a second. But the question that we're going to have here is what does this have to do with Avowed?
Is an oath worth the weight of a crown?
Well, there's not really a lot that I can say. At the time of this recording, Avowed's not out yet, so I don't really know what impact any of these are going to have on Avowed. Very likely nothing will do with it. It does provoke an interesting idea, though, of ways that Obsidian could create side quests in Avowed, because these things are very side questy. You know, they're things that you could be doing as you're traveling around the area that Avowed's going to be set in. So they might make things that are similar to this. We might see similar soul mechanics. We might see similar issues. So while we won't get these exact quests done, we might have things that are close to this as side quests. As well, depending on some of the more big adventures that we discuss in the legendary category, they might have things that impact Avowed itself, but we didn't talk about any of those today. Any of these locations could be visited in Avowed. Any of these locations could be talked about in Avowed. We don't have any information about that yet, but there could be some minor Easter eggs about this kind of stuff. But more, I think it gives the idea of flavor that Avowed could have for side quests. As well, maybe we'll have the potential to have a stronghold in Avowed and send companions out on quests like these. Who knows? I doubt it, but it's possible. So that's everything I have to discuss. Thanks everyone for joining me on today's episode of the World of Eora, where we took a look at some of the minor and average adventures that you can send your companions on in the background for the first Pillars of Eternity games. These are stories and adventures that your character isn't doing, but is still happening within the world. And when we read these things, we learn about locations that we can't normally visit. They're mentioned only in the lore. We learn a little bit of the nuance of how some of the soul mechanics of this world work. We learn about the government structure of other nations that exist in this world. There's a lot of little lore that give detailed nuance for how this stuff works. And so I've really enjoyed looking at it, and I know I feel inspired for how to do a tabletop game set in Eora. I just need to figure out how to get the race and class system to work the same way, because everyone I know that likes to play, they like to play either D&D or Pathfinder, so I got to transpose that. If anyone knows of good resources on that, I have found some on the internet, but if anyone knows of good resources on transposing that, send me an email, worldofeora@gmail.com. Also, if you just want to ask questions or contribute to today's episode or anything like that, send me an email. I love talking about this nerdy geeky stuff. Or if you want to tell me I suck, I'm fine with that too. I am a fragile little man, so maybe go a little bit easy on me, but whatever, I'll take it. I appreciate any feedback you have to offer. If you want to follow me on Twitter, at World of Eora is where you can see me on there. Mostly just post updates on the show, but as other projects come in the works, I'll probably include that. So there we have it. That is some minor and an average adventure from Pillars of Eternity. A little bit of lore in there between. Thanks everyone for listening. I've been your host, Eric, aka Gingerino, and I'll see you guys next time.